What's good, people? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Pseudosciences University, where you can think what you want to. This is a continuation from earlier, where we dove into a book written by Edward Kritzler, the Jewish pirates of the Caribbean. Before we get off into that, though, I would like to take a look at some characters that are said to be of Sephardi heritage. Let's see if we can see anything familiar about them. The first individual would be Asher MD. He was born in 1837 and died in 1889. See if we can find something on him. Okay, Asher, born in 1837 and died in 1889, was the first Glasgow-born Jew to obtain a medical degree. The Asher Memorial Medal and Prize is named for him. After graduating MD from the university in 1856, Asher worked in Glasgow for 6 years before moving to London. He worked with the London Jewish Board of Guardians to provide health care for poor Jews and became secretary of the Great Synagogue and in 1870, the first secretary of the United States Synagogue. He made many trips abroad to advise on improving conditions for Jewish immigrants. There was a memorial plaque in his memory at the entrance of the synagogue in Garnet Hill. So he's a Jew, born in Glasgow. Now, look at this man. I want y'all to be honest. Is this a white man? This is a Jew, confirmed, born in Glasgow. And Glasgow was a major hub for Jews. Glasgow and Edinburgh. That's interesting. Let's get to the book. Let's get to the book, people. We're going to stop with this BS out here. The Jewish Pirates of the Caribbeans. Last we read, it was the introduction. We'll begin again, but this time we'll start in chapter 1. I think we last left off for a quick week recap. The Jews of Spain, in this book, according to the author and many other sources. How am I doing this? The Jews were kicked out in 1492 and ended up for a short time, well, a long time in Portugal. The Spanish Inquisition even swept into Portugal, and then they had to leave Portugal. 100,000 were converted into Christianity. Another 100,000 were exiled. Those that were converted to Christianity were allowed to stay in Portugal and in other European lands where Jews weren't, people who were openly Jewish weren't allowed to dwell. Now we're getting into chapter 1 of this marvelously written book. Columbus and Jamaica's chosen people. Okay. May 1504, Santa Gloria, Jamaica. Oh, let me turn this down some. All right. May 1504, Santa Gloria, Jamaica. For nearly a year, Columbus had been stranded in Jamaica with a hoard of gold, ammunition, and a munitions crew, and a few dozen teenage loyalists, some of whom were secret Jews. Alone, melancholy, and confined to his cabin by gout, the great explorer wrote his patron Queen Isabella a despairing letter. He feared that even if he defeated the mutineers, the governor of Santo Domingo, who had promised to send a rescue ship, wanted him dead. So much had happened since he had been making the rounds of Europe. A would-be explorer going from king to king seeking royal backing for a promised quick passage west across the ocean sea to India and the wealth of the East. In 1486, at his first meeting with Spain's royal couple, King Ferdinand, although intrigued by his plans, told Columbus the time was not opportune. They were in the midst of war and could not seriously consider such an important matter until peace was restored. In parting, Queen Isabella counseled patience and awarded Columbus a retainer, promising they would meet again, and when the war was over. So basically, she went against King Ferdinand. She just hollered at him on the side, like, basically, I guess she was telling her husband, let's just don't be so hasty on just letting him go. I mean, listen to what he's saying. He sound good. I mean, they're talking about he can bring some gold. We need gold. Because when the Jews left Spain, it collapsed the economy. So them niggas needed some money. So she didn't want to just let him go if he could promise some gold. Let's see what he got. I feel that. On January 12th, 1492, Columbus entered the royal quarters. He had been summoned a few days after Spain's final victory over the Moors at Granada, and the queen had sent him money to buy new clothes and a mule to ride. Encouraged by her gift, Columbus was confident. He had honed his proposal into a detailed presentation with maps and charts from the Jewish astronomers Abraham Zacuto and quotes from the Bible and Greek sages supporting his view that the world was round, the oceans not large, and Japan lay 3,000 miles to the west across the sea ocean. Prepared for questions, he received none. After an unsettling silence, Ferdinand spoke. Victory over the Moors had emptied the treasury, he said. Moreover, he could not abide Columbus's demand for hereditary rule over the lands he might discover. The queen, his admirer, said nothing. The meeting broke up and Columbus left, angry and disgusted. All this time he had waited for the war to end. Now that it had, Ferdinand was pleading poverty. Pausing briefly in the corridor, he informed the king's treasurer that he was leaving for France, where Bartholomew, his younger brother, was arranging an audience with the king. So he going to France now. If that monarch wasn't interested, he would cross the canal to meet with the English king. He would not be denied his dream, one that has Cervantes wrote, one that as Cervantes wrote of Don Quixote. Quixote? No. He hugged and would not part with even if barefoot friars had begged him. So he hugged and would not part even if barefoot friars had begged him. Before Columbus rode past the gates of Santa Fe, the world treasurer Luis de Santiago yeah, sought and was granted an audience with Queen Isabella. The royal chronicler noted Santiago appeared distressed, as if a great misfortune had befallen him personally. He had good reason. Santiago was a secret Jew, and as a member of the royal court, he was aware his people were about to be expelled from Spain. There were upward of 500,000 Jews in the country they had called home since the time of Christ. Where would they go? India? China? Perhaps the explorer Columbus would discover a new land somewhere. Santiago and the other Jews in the royal service hoped Columbus' voyage would provide an answer. Whoa. Whoa. It's deep. All right. The Inquisition mandated that Jews under penalty of death must either leave or convert to Catholicism. I mean, the funny thing is this. For all the Jews that converted to Catholicism, right? I mean, after a while, it would just be their heritage. Like they would forget that they were actually Jews. It seemed like it would be more Christian Jews today than any other people. It may be. Let's continue. Santiago and the other secret jewels in the royal service hoped Columbus' voyage would provide an answer. The Inquisition mandated that Jews under the penalty of death must either leave or convert to Catholicism. Santiago, like many others, had converted and became a new Christian. If discovered Judaizing, the converts were liable to be burned at the stake. The Santiago family, long established in Spain, was among the first targets of the Inquisition. Luis's cousins had gone up in flames in Saragossa, and only the intervention of Ferdinand had prevented Luis from suffering the same fate. Santiago addressed the queen. He was astonished. He told her to see Her Highness, who has always shown such resolute spirit in matters of great consequence, should lack it now for an enterprise so little risk for such great gain. So he went and hollered at her, like, because he went in on what Christopher Columbus might find, because he know of the Jews, about the Jews at that time was about to be kicked out of Spain. So he went in having an ear to the queen, like, yo, you know what I'm saying, holla at my mans, don't leave him. Like, you don't even, it's a little risk, but you will have a great gain. Like, but anyway, let's continue. He spoke to the queen of the wealth to be acquired and the great services she would render to God, all for the price of a few carvels. Alluding to Columbus's plan to seek royal backing elsewhere, he cautioned Isabella. It would be a great damage to her crown and a grave reproach to Her Highness if any other prince should undertake what Columbus offered Her Highness. If money was consideration, Santiago said he would be glad to finance the fleet himself. A mounted messenger caught up with Columbus as he was crossing the bridge of the Pines, 7 miles from Santa Fe, and bade him return. Later that day, with all the parties again gathered in the royal quarters, the king informed Columbus that the crown would sponsor his enterprise of the Indies and meet his demands. No mention was made of hereditary title. 2 months later, it was still a stumbling block in his negotiations when an event occurred that made its inclusion mandatory. On the morning of March 31st of 1492, Columbus was in his room in Santa Fe overlooking the main square when the sound of trumpets brought him to his balcony. Below, the town crier, flanked by mounted guards, read the expulsion order of the Inquisition. Jews have 4 months to leave. After that, any caught in our domain will be punished without trial by death and seizure of property. The Jews of Spain had been threatened with expulsion before. Rulers since the Visigoths had used this threat to extract more money from them. A period joke compared to Jews to a money box that you break open when you need money. So the Visigoths used to. I got you. But this time it was different. The church was involved. To the Jews of the royal court who supported Columbus, the expulsion order made it essential that Columbus hold out for hereditary rule. If no Asian kingdom welcomed the Jewish refugees, Columbus, as ruler of the new land, would be able to provide a haven for the Spanish Jews. It is thought that Columbus himself was a descendant of the Spanish Jews, the Coleon family, who had converted and moved to Genoa a century before the heels of the massacre in 1391. Some even contend he was a Kabbalist. Whatever his genealogy, he was in sympathy with the people of the book, and they with him. In his early years in Portugal and Spain, he lived in largely Jewish and Christian world. He lived in a largely Jewish and new Christian world of navigators, cartographers, astronomers, and mathematicians. While others looked askance at this wandering sailor and laughed at his dream, Iberian Jews and conversos assisted Columbus in developing his enterprise of the Indies. In their learned circles, they dealt with a round world. Church geography did not apply to them. It is a round world. It's a circle at the base. On April 17th, Columbus agreed to the capitulations of Santa Fe, which limited his rights to lifetime rule. 2 weeks later, this ruling was reversed, and Columbus was granted hereditary rule. No account exists of the final negotiations, but it is likely that court Jews facing the forced exile of their people counseled Columbus to hold firm to his demand. One imagines a scene in the royal chambers with Santiago persuading the royals that the explorer's demand should not trouble them if his voyage was successful. Columbus and his crew of 90 men could not possibly subdue one of the powerful Asian nations. On the other hand, if he took possession of a few islands along the way, the crown would benefit by having way stations for Spain's trading ships plying the shortcut passage to the wealth of the East. Whether or not such a scene took place, Ferdinand finally relented. Columbus would sail with his right to rule any new lands he discovered, to be enjoyed forever by his heirs and successors. After Columbus returned from his successful first voyage, he made 3 more trips across the Western Sea. He never reached Asia and didn't live long enough to fulfill his pledge to Santiago and the court Jews to provide a homeland for the converted Jews. But it would be kept by his family in the new land. The crown did bequeath to Columbus's descendants the island of Jamaica. So, Columbus family had Jamaica, as we read earlier in the introduction and prologue. And there they provided a safe haven for Jews or Jews that had converted to Christianity, but there they was able to maintain their Jewish heritage out in the open. All right. How this goes back, how this came about goes back to the promise he made to the teenage conversos who stood by him when he was marooned there. Okay. So it was Jews in the land before his family bought it or acquired it. Returning from his fourth voyage to the New World, Columbus had been forced to beach his ships in Jamaica after sailing from Panama with a cache of gold objects bartered from the Indians. His two ships were leaking badly. Columbus hoped to reach Santo Domingo to obtain others to return to Spain. But his worm-eaten carvels, described by his son as more full of holes than a bee's honeycomb, barely made Jamaica. With water rising in their holes, he ran them aground and lashed them together in a shallow, beclaimed bay on the island's north coast. A crossbow shot from the land. Okay, not too far from the land. Atop his foredeck, he fashioned a palm thatched hut to serve as his cabin. In his first letter to the Queen, written soon after he arrived, he bragged that he had discovered the source of Solomon's gold in the mines of Panama. That's funny because in the book America, it says that Ophir was called Panama. Panama was called Ophir, and Solomon and David had been sending ships there from their days. Remember to get that. I know that's what it says. Okay, so he found the source of Solomon's gold in the mines of Panama and claimed to have seen more gold in a few days there than all his previous trips. His 14-year-old son, Fernando, brought along as cabin boy, later recorded that his father had traded small bells and mirrors for 63 gold pendants and other gold objects with his Viragu Indians of Panama. With the Viragu Indians of Panama. This was his second trip to Jamaica. When he had discovered the islands in 1494, he had named the Half Moon Bay, where he was now stranded, Santa Gloria, for the beauty of its glorious landscape. After a year, he thought he might never leave. Hold on. One second. Okay. So he named it Santa Gloria for the beauty of its glorious landscape. After a year, he thought he might never leave. Was this where his life was to end? Uncertain of his future, he wrote his queen. We have been confined for 10 months, lodged on the decks of our ships. My men have mutinied. My brother, my son, and those that are faithful are sick, starving, and dying. Governor Ovando of Santo Domingo has sent to me, see if I am dead. what has sent to see if I am dead, rather than to carry me back alive. I conclude your dang. It almost felt like I had some dyslexia right there for a minute, y'all. I get me in there. Okay, Ovando of Santo Domingo has sent to see if I am dead rather than to carry me back alive. I conclude your officers are intend my life should terminate here. That's messed up. The object of his cynicism was the arrival of the precious week of his ship from Orvando. It had anchored outside the reef in the late afternoon and left before dawn. Before sailing away, its captain ferried over a side of ham, a barrel of wine, and a message from the governor that a rescue ship would soon be sent. The governor's message did confirm the safe arrival of Columbus's first mate, Diego Mendez, who 10 months before had set forth in a dugout canoe to carry news of their plight to Santo Domingo. But as he wrote the Queen, he really believed the ship had been sent to spy on how I might be totally destroyed. That's what he said. Made furious by his suspicions, Columbus concluded his letter with an angry vow: should I die here in Jamaica, and his proprietary rights, proprietary rights be withdrawn, ingratitude will bring down the wrath of heaven, so that the wealth that I have discovered shall be the means of stirring up all mankind to revenge, and the Spanish nation shall suffer hereafter. Fortunately for Columbus, Isabella never received his threat. Having no way to send this letter, Columbus could only call on the good angels that succor the oppressed and innocent to bring this paper to the great mistress. Apparently, no heavenly couriers were listening, as this little known letter never left the island. So this dude is in bad shape. And he got gold. And his niggas want him dead. And his backup sick. I'm still tripping that his family provided a safe haven for Jews. Right? And I just want to, I know it had to be, but I'm just trying to look, I'm going to look up and see when it was just a lot of white people in Jamaica. I know it had to be, but it's just not here. So I got to put it there. So I know I'll put it all together. Hold on, let me check something out right quick. So we dealing with the Sephardic Jews kicked out of Spain and Portugal. So I guess he backtracked the story. All right. So the letter he wrote to Queen Isabella never made it. All right. The mutiny referred to in his despairing missive had broken out 5 months earlier when Francisco Porras, captain of one of the ships, burst in on the admiral in his straw cabin and demanded they leave at once. He and his brother Diego, the fleet's notary, accused Columbus of having deliberately marooned them in Jamaica, knowing he was unwelcome in Santo Domingo. The Porras brothers' insurrection was joined by most of the seamen where's it at? Most of the older seamen who, after 6 months in Santa Gloria, wanted out. Columbus declared he would not leave, but rather than battle the mutineers, agreed to let them go. Crying, "I am for Castile, follow me," the rebel leader seized the dozen canoes Columbus had bartered from the Indians, forcing the natives to row. The rebels made 3 attempts to overcome the fierce currents of the 108-mile wide canal to Hispaniola. On their final try, they gave up, though only after throwing 18 Indian paddlers overboard and chopping off the hands of those clung to the sides. 5 months later, after 2 weeks' march across the islands, marked by rape and pillage, they were encamped in an Indian village a half-mile from Santa Gloria, intending to seize the admiral's ship. Columbus had just finished his troubled letter to the Queen when the 2 men had sent to parley with the rebels returned. They had taken an offer of pardon and a promise that they would soon be rescued, but Porras rebuffed them. When his emissaries reported that Porras' men were preparing for battle, Columbus withdrew to his cabin in despair, but Bartholomew, his fierce younger brother, convinced him to take fight to the enemy. He armed the 50 young loyalists and set forth to attack the rebel camp. When the mutineers saw Columbus's teenage army approach, they laughed. There was no way mere youths brought up in a softer mode of life could defeat such hardy sailors, rendered robust and vigorous by the roving life. But the rebels' confidence was premature. In a superhuman effort, Bartholomew slew the 6 mutineers sent to attack him, and had the point of his sword at Porras's breast when the rest surrendered. The Porras brothers were put in irons aboard ship, and the 48 rebels were disarmed and kept on shore. With peace restored and united, mistrustful crew nervously awaited their promised rescue. Even if Ovando did send a ship, Columbus had little faith his gold medallions would be safe in Hispaniola, whose previous governor, he wrote the Queen, robbed me and my brother of our dearly purchased gold. He expected no less from Ovando. During the tense 5 weeks before the 2 rescue ships arrived, one sent by Mendez, the other by Ovando, he rarely left his cabin. Never again did he set foot on Jamaica. What happened to the gold of Veragua? The crown had instructed Columbus that if treasure was found, you must draw upon an account of all this in the presence of our notary, so that we may know everything that the said island and mainland may contain. Yet the 63 medallions from Panama are not mentioned in the notary's account, nor are they listed in the inventory of the ship that brought him home to Spain. Unsure his gold would survive on Vando's rescue, Columbus would not have left the gold in Hispaniola. Columbus also had reason to fear a renewed mutiny on the way back to Spain. It is therefore unlikely that he kept the gold with him. That leaves Jamaica, since he never left the ship and trusted no one but his son and brother and a core group of loyalists. He presumably asked the members of this latter group to transfer his gold to safety. There were two good reasons he could count on these youths, whose unstintingly loyalty he vowed to reward. First, they had a fiscal interest in the voyage, as their fathers helped finance it. Second, their families, being wealthy conversos, were targeted by the Inquisition. It is reasonable, therefore, to postulate to keep their son safe, Columbus's backers persuaded him to take them along. While the Jewish youngsters may have looked to Columbus as their Moses, as he himself did, Jamaica was no promised land. Still, for teenagers forced to lead the underground lives in Spain, a year's idle on a tropical island was nearly as good. When not swimming around their rotting ships or diving off a yardum, what the heck happened? They wrestled on the beach and otherwise contested for favor of their naked Indian girls who daily brought food and lingered to watch the young gods at play. If Columbus did trust them with the cachet of gold, he would undoubtedly have called the boys to his cabin and instructed them to deliver it to Chief Huro, his Indian ally on the island's most powerful cacique, who had outfitted Mendez on his successful crossing in Hispaniola and remained loyal after the prophetic night when Columbus's god ate the moon. Columbus had noted that Zacuto's almanac that a full eclipse was due in an early evening of February 29th of 1504. The natives, turned off by the rapacious ways of the mutineers, no longer saw their visitors as God, and having their fill of Spanish trinkets, had begun withholding food supplies from the Spaniards, who, Fernando wrote, consumed more in one day than the Indians ate in 20. That's real interesting. This is saying it's not getting a stream. Is this not streaming? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Let me look on here right quick. Take a pause for the cause. Hold up. It's rocking out. I don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so it's speculated that Columbus sent the gold to his Indian ally. And Columbus had an almanac, and he used the expected uh, eclipse to fascinate the Indians. Oh, we didn't read that yet. Hold on. Columbus saw the celestial event as an opportunity to rectify this by taking their money away. And on that day of the eclipse, he summoned the chiefs for a feast and a palaver. What is that? It's a palaver. Oh, I can't do it there. Can't do it there either. Okay. And told them, attend tonight the rising of the moon. She will rise in flame with wrath, signifying the punishment of God will visit upon you. When the eclipse begins shortly after sunset, Columbus retreated to his cabin. The Indians grew so frightened, wrote Fernando, that with great howling and lamentation they came running in all directions to the ships, laden with provisions, and praying for the admiral to intercede with his God that he might not vent his wrath upon them. When the moon was in full shadow, Columbus emerged. He had pled with his God, and he told them who agreed to forgive them as long as the Indians kept the Christians supplied. As proof, they would soon see the moon's anger and inflammation passing away. Hold on. Where was I at? Visiting. Okay, I remember that part. Some frightened directions. Okay. As proof, they would soon see the moon's anger and inflammation pass away. From that time forward, wrote Fernando, the Indians were diligent in providing us with all we needed and were loud in the praise of the Christian God. The eclipse vindicated Huro, um, Huiro, Huiro, who afterward presented Columbus with the tribute of a small disc of gold, with a small disc of gold from his previous disclosed mine. Considering Columbus's desperate straits, it is thought he called on Huiru to safeguard his gold. If so, he would have had his young allies transported under the cover of darkness. Although there is no hard evidence for this account of Columbus's alleged gold mine, it is supported by later developments, including the return to Jamaica of the converso youths after their rescue. Having left the land of the Inquisition, they chose to remain in Hispaniola, Hispaniola, no, Hispaniola. Oh, why am I tripping? Hispaniola. When the rescue ships landed in Santo Domingo, rather than accompanying Columbus and the other crew back to Spain. In November of 1504, Columbus had been back only 3 weeks when his patroness, Isabella, died. The following May, the king offered him much rich estate and pension if he would relinquish his rights of discovery. Ferdinand regretted allowing Isabella to persuade him to empower Columbus with all sorts of rights and privileges. But although Columbus was in declining health, he was not about to surrender his hard-won titles. A little more than a year later, he made out his will and died the next day, May 20th, 1506, with his loyal mate Diego Mendez and son Fernando by his side. 3 years afterward, Columbus's and I read something else. I read he died a whole nother way. I read he was jailed and died in a dungeon, yo. I have to look this up. I have to go. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a claim source, but I'm gonna have to get into this because I know I read Christopher Columbus was jailed because he brutalized the Indians, and he died in jail, lonely. That's real talk. I know I read that for a fact. So this tidbit this is still interesting. It's still very interesting. I like it. I like the book a lot. I rock with it, man, because it's connecting a lot of stuff. You know, that dude that I showed you, Asher, MD of Glasgow. He come from a community of Jews. That dude was a black guy. This guy, this guy right here. The him? No, this guy right here, Asher. That is a black guy, or what? You know what I'm saying? What we know to be black today. Forget this contrast thing they did. That's a black guy. That's a black guy with a 1960s pimp girl with a part. Don't play with me. It's a Jew, and he looked like a relative. So Queen Isabella dies. It's speculated that Columbus hid some money. Columbus dies, and he dies with his loved ones on his side. This is a totally different story than I read, yo. Like I read something totally different in the books that I was given. 3 years. Let's continue. All right. 3 years afterward, Columbus' eldest son, Diego, having inherited his titles, arrived in his Hispaniola, to replace Orlando as governor. Okay. So Christopher Columbus' son came to replace Ovando. Accompanying him were his younger brother, Fernando, and his uncle, Bartholomew. This was their first trip back to the Indies since their rescue. A contemporary painting shows them seated around a conference table in the governor's mansion. Hmm. Let's see if we can find that right quick. Fernando and Bartholomew at the governor's mansion. Where you at? me just see Grizzle. Fake. Just want to see what he look like, man. Let's see what he look like. I don't even care what they say he look like. I just want to get an idea. Want to see if he got that Persian looking nose, Arabic looking. Bust. Oh, it's just bust. 1998 to 2002. Come on, bro. We're the ones that. Let's see this one. No. There ain't no other pictures of Bartholomew Corleone. 1998 picture. What is this one? Mm, all right. I get carried away. Let's get back to it. Alrighty. So Columbus's eldest son, Diego, inherits the title and replaces Orlando as a governor. Accompanying him was his younger brother Fernando and uncle Bartholomew. Oh, I went through that all wrong. This was their first trip back to the Indies since their rescue A contemporary painting shows them seated around the conference table in the governor's mansion. One issue they hoped to resolve was dealt with right away when Santiago recruited Portuguese from Hispaniola to reconnoiter Jamaica in advance of settling the island. Since San Diego's uncle and brother left for Spain right after the Portugal's return, it is apparent they had come for the left behind gold of Columbus. It's an interesting theory. Nothing more is heard of the 63 gold pendants, but Chief Huro's mind began. Chief Huro's mind begat the legend of Columbus's secret gold mine, which have not yet been opened by the kings of Spain or any other. To lead to the Jamaica's expedition, Diego had appointed Juan de Esquivel, a converso who served under Bartholomew. Landing on the coast of Huro's domain, Esquivel founded Melilla, which is the name of a Spanish port in Morocco that, coincidentally or not, alone in the empire was exempted from the expulsion order and remained a haven for the Jews after the port was captured by Spain in 1497. When Esquivel returned to Hispaniola, and it is thought delivered the 63 medallions to Bartholomew, Diego appointed him Jamaica's governor and directed the loyal conversos to return to the island. Thus began the settlement of Jamaica, a Caribbean island that, like Melilla in Morocco, would henceforth serve as a haven for Jews. Okay. In 1511, the flotilla of ships carrying more than 1,000 settlers dropped anchor in Santa Gloria near the beach where Columbus was marooned. Expecting to find gold and create a new world, capital rivaling Seville, the settlers laid out a city 2 miles long and named it New Seville del Oro, New Seville of Gold. Unlike the Portugals, the newcomers were of minor Spanish nobility and had come to seek their fortune. A contemporary wrote, they fancied that gold was to be gathered as easily and readily as fruit from trees. Excuse me. However, when they realized that they had to dig for it, and even then with rare success, delusions quickly set in. The toilsome job of excavating the ore from the bowels of the earth was given over to the Indians. Within a decade, gold was being mined in Jamaica. But after Diego Columbus and the king had taken their share, the amount from the smelting house was not enough to satisfy the Hidalgos, among whom were some former mutineers and their leader, Francisco Porras. That these rebels chose to return to the island they had risked their lives to leave suggests that they believed there was more gold in Jamaica than what was being mined. It is therefore not surprising that Columbus' family and their allies, the Portugals, kept Huro's mind a secret. Despite the paucity of gold, island life was pleasantly rewarding. Jamaica was a fertile land, and the average allotment of 150 to 200 pacified Indians per settler meant that one could have a successful ranching operation, made all the more comfortable by the modest harem of baptized Indian women. Jamaica was developing nicely as food depot, supplying passing ships and breeding horses for the conquistadors. But then the Indians started dying. Used to the white men's germs, unused to the white men's germs, they expired when they got sick, and the plague of smallpox finished them off. Soon, everyone wanted to leave. It's Jamaica. Okay. So they got Indians working in the mines. More settlers come, they bring in disease. Wait a minute. Where did it say that at? It said, unused to the white man's germs. So these are Jews coming here. Wait a minute. Their allies, the Portugals, kept Hero's mind a secret. Despite the paucity of gold, island life was pleasantly rewarding. Jamaica was a fertile land, and the average allotment of 150 to 200 pacified Indians per settler meant that one could have a successful ranching operation made comfortable by a modest harem of women. Jamaica was developing nicely as a food depot, supplying passing ships and breeding horses for the conquistadors. Okay. So who is coming to Jamaica? Okay. If I'm not mistaken, it's Spanish nobility coming to Jamaica. Okay. Along in the empire was exempted from, okay, so that place, Maliola, was exempted from expulsion of the Jews. Return to Hispaniola. Delivered 63. Okay. There you go. Return. Okay. Just had to make sure of something. Continuing. In 1513, Es, Esquivel reported that many of the new Seville colonists had left for Cuba, leaving behind their Caciques, Portuguese guests, who had moved to the south side of the island to carry on cultivation of foodstuff. The Caciques had been considered personal baggage and as such did not have to produce the clean blood certificates required of other settlers in the colony. Later developments indicate that they were conversos. So the Portuguese that they left behind were conversos. They moved to the south side of the island. And the other people, the colonists of Spain, left for Cuba. While New Seville struggled, the South Coast settlement flourished. So where the converso Portuguese Jews went, it began to flourish. I get it. Peace, A9. What up, bro? Just saying it, B. Okay. So New Seville struggled, and the South Coast settlement flourished, where the Caciques went. Eagles. All right. Them motherfuckers. Okay. Though the community was never formally reorganized, a cryptic remark by Peter Martyr from 1511, the royal chronicler of the Indies, makes an oblique reference to the conversos. After being made abbot of Jamaica in 1514, he wrote the king, "There are two settlements, but only one will have my church." The following year, a report of Jamaica's new governor, Francisco Garay, pointedly referred to the community. Having replaced Esquivel, Garay wrote his sovereign on the state of the island and underlined his intention to see the country and the site of the town on the other side. Later, he too would desert the island to join the conquest of Mexico, leaving behind the Caguays, whatever that is. Say Guays, to join those who had come before. So this is 15, what? 1513. So they're in Mexico in 1513, messing them over. Conquest of Mexico. That's important because all we got to do is remember when we studying to remember these dates because they're going to overlap with other events in history and you're going to be able to see who was without seeing a picture. From the time that Santiago financed Columbus's enterprise of the Indies and persuaded the royal couple to grant the explorer's family hereditary rights to any new land he might discover, Columbus sailed with a hidden agenda. Along with his stated goal of gaining the riches of the East, it was hoped he would acquire a new land where Sephardim could live free from the terror of the Inquisition. So this book is saying Columbus, he wanted some riches, but he really wanted to acquire land for his people. It's real interesting. I have to look up this author after this. Goal of gaining the riches of the East, it was hoped he would acquire a new land where Sephardim could live free from the terrors of the Inquisition. The discoverer of the Indies didn't rule long enough to make good his promise to provide a homeland for the converted Jews. But for more than a century, his heirs kept Jamaica off limits to the hooded inquisitors who were empowered to root out heresy in all Spanish territories. As far as Jamaica's proprietors were concerned, as long as their Portugals wore a Christian mass, no one might question the sincerity of their religious beliefs. Under protection of the island rulers, convert Jews came disguised as conversos from Portugal. Their presence there known and approved by the Spanish crown. Mm, okay. Okay. Chapter 2, Adventuring in the New World. Let's take a little break. Friendly reminder, you are watching the Land Single production, Pseudosciences University. Here, you can think what you want to. Right now, we're looking at a book, commentary, and read of a book written by Edward Kritzler, The Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean. Just read a whole alternate life of Christopher Columbus. According to this author, it boils down that his whole goal, well, not his entire goal, but along with wanting the riches of the East, he really wanted to find land where the Sephardim, his people, can dwell, free from religious persecution. And we'll start chapter 2, Adventuring in the New World. At the dawn of the age of discovery, when Spain's monarchs banished the Jews to purify their nation, followers of the law of Moses sailed with the explorers and marched with the conquistadors. Followers of the law of Moses sailed with the explorers and marched with the conquistadors. So it was Jews like the United States Army right now. You know what I'm saying? It's people in the military that are working for the government, and it might be not in the best, it might not be in the best interest of their nation, their actual people or race. I don't want to say race, but their respective nations. You know, like a Mexican is governing through the government over his people, regardless of what it is, whether it's beneficial for his people. He's following an order. So he's like, so that's how I see this, the Jews marching with the inquisitors. They're trying to blend in. But by this time, as the time is going on, I'm seeing like they probably, losing heritage. I mean, it's hard to, I can't see me faking, well, I don't know, fake like going into a Muslim church and, praying to the Most High. I've done that before, actually, visiting Farrakhan. I just said my prayer to the Most High. But hey, matter of fact, I think that's what they was told to do, dealing with Nebuchadnezzar and his God. Like, you know what I'm saying? They can't tell you ain't worshiping the Most High. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But it's an interesting book. All right, continuing. At the dawn of the age of discovery, when Spain's monarchs banished the Jews to purify their nation, followers of the law of Moses sailed with the explorers and marched with the conquistadors. With the discovery and settlement of the New World, they took solace in the hope of finding a safe haven, or at least putting distance between themselves and the Inquisition. Unlike the other pioneers, they had no home to return to, and as seen in the preceding chapter, they were among the first foreigners to permanently settle the New World. Jews were amongst the first settlers. These Portuguese Moranos. Y'all got to remember who we talking about. the Moors, these Moranos, these Moors, these Jews that were forced into conversion of Islam and now Christianity, are among the settlers, the first settlers of the New World, permanently. Think about that. All right. Going about as bona fide Christians. Most carried their secret to the grave. The adventures of some who did not paint extraordinary tableaux of their time. These include a turban-wearing pilot who sailed with three of the early explorers, the first capitalists to own and market the New World flora, and a suspect Jew who discovered California, a conquistador who was the first Jew burned in the New World, and the other Judaizers, men and women who joined the conquest of Mexico. Gaspar, the Jewish pilot. That name sounds familiar. Gaspar. Outlawed in the civilized world and vulnerable in the diaspora, Jews became skilled in ways to find and explore new lands. They were the era's foremost map makers and also perfected the nautical instruments and astronomical tables the early explorers sailed with. When Jewish expertise was needed, prejudice took a backseat to expediency, and the Jewish pilots, adept at reading maps and using navigational instruments, were recruited to interpret those tables. Had they not, many an explorer would have been lost in the vast oceans, and three of the most famous, Vasco da Gama, Pedro Cabral, and Amerigo Vespucci, used the same enigmatic Jew to show them the way. Man, this is a lot of credit to these particular Jews now. And let me show y'all something right quick. Hold on, is it time to connect? Yeah, let's just look at this. Hold on, wait a minute. I don't need that. Where is it at? Is it this one? Close you. Open you. Okay. This right here is a thesis and dissertation written by Arnaz de Amanfo. Making History, the Sephardi Jewish orphans of Sao Tome and the African American appropriation of their story. Right? It's interesting, ain't it? We're going to look at that. Let me see something. How do I interact with this one? Okay, there we go. All right. Let me see if y'all can see that. part on here. 12, is it page 12? Should have went to the index, huh? The table of content. $25. See. Just wanted to read this. Still too far back. Like to thank y'all for coming by and rocking out with me. Right here. But I gotta get this down because I'm about to bring some hey yo, don't forget to subscribe to Solar Vision Debate League and the Argument League. That's a conglomerate of Solar Vision Debate League, which is the #1 debate league on YouTube, period. Trying to get to these kids. Is this it? Oh, okay, this is what I'm looking for. All right. The Sephardic Jews of Sodome. Sao Tome, that's how you say it. All right. This chapter discusses, let me enlarge it some. I don't know why y'all Y'all can't see it. I'll read it though. Oh, okay. I control it. All right. This chapter discussed the historic background of the Jews of Spain and Portugal. All right. We just got off that, right? With the Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean by Edward Kritzler. It says an overview of their status and condition in the Iberian Peninsula will be examined. It will attempt to trace the geographical and experiential trajectory of the Sephardic Jewish children from Spain through Portugal, then to Sao Tome. The historical perspective of other scholars and historians regarding these orphans will be discussed in this chapter. It would also account for their lives on a little known island of Sotome in West Africa, as well as the possibilities of their immigration to other parts of the world. Uh, all right, how far did it go? Okay. Okay. The Sephardim who lived in Spain for many years went through different conditions under Christian and Muslim monarchs. Some of them adapted quickly to the wave of the religious practices of the various kings of Spain. This ability to adapt quickly soon endeared them to the nobles of the kings. In many cases, they were very influential and soon became part of the advisors of the kings. In other cases, this led to a rising animosity against the Jews of Spain, which led to general indignation and subsequent pogroms against them in 1391. According to Mokata, about 4,000 Jews fell victim to the onslaught. Many Jews, therefore, were forced to leave Spain or to convert to Christianity. The same thing the other book said. Those who converted and referred to as new Christians, were yet again suspected of superstitiously practicing the Jewish religions. The circle of animosity and violence against the Sephardim was therefore ignited from this point. The majority of the Jews from Spain fleeing the Inquisition and expulsion immigrated to Portugal. They chose Portugal with the hopes for a better life and perhaps toleration. It is important to note that there were Jews already living in Portugal. Like I said earlier, they had to. I mean, that's where they went to meet they were accepted when they were kicked out. They were accepted where their family members already were. Later on, we'll find that out when we read other books like the Huguenots and the Jacobites. We read about those people and the Palatines and the Bolsheviks. When we read about those people, we'll see that how this is one big network that stemmed from the expulsion of the Jews uh, from Spain, which eventually led them to places like America, which many of us have a relationship with one way or another. Let's just say that. All right. All right, the majority of the Jews from Spain fleeing the Inquisition and expulsion immigrated to Portugal. They chose Portugal with hopes for a better life and perhaps toleration. It is important to note that there were Jews already living in Portugal. However, the Jews of Portugal fared a lot better than the counterparts in Spain did, although they were also relegated to their quarters and made to wear stipulated apparel. They were allowed to conduct their religious affairs themselves. They were allowed to conduct their religious affairs themselves. Yeah, yeah, the Jews was made to stand out. They had to wear certain clothes, like especially in the Ottoman Empire. They pretty much wore stuff similar to the Moors, except I think they had to have a green vest um, on instead of the crimson color that they would probably wear, or purplish, or whatever it was. Um, the Jews had to wear and it's crazy, right? So clearly, the Jews and the Moors look alike. Like, if people can't tell if you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, it's like everybody look alike, obviously, right? Right? And we'll look at pictures. We'll look at the oldest pictures of Ferdinand and the Queen Isabella. I think she's going to end up being white, or creamy looking as hell. But let's continue. So basically, after they in this particular sect, they just like the book we just read, the Jewish pirates of the Caribbean. After they got kicked out of Spain, they went to Portugal. They were there for a while, and then they ended up going through the same thing. All right, but before this expulsion, King John II had allowed the Jewish refugees to remain in Portugal. Right, these arrangements for their stay was negotiated with the monarchy. They This involved the payment of a head tax, or coima, by the Jews. By 1493, many of these refugees could not pay this ransom. Perhaps this was due to the short ultimatum given to them by the Spanish monarchy, which impoverished them, which impoverished many of them. Dang, it's like a big setup, man. Okay. Gerber narrates that alongside the payment of an expensive tax, the king gave an 8-month long reprieve period to allow the Jews to stay. Upon the expiration of this period, the king accused them of non fulfillment of their part of the negotiation. God, stop doing that. Okay, so basically, um, the king of Portugal negotiated for the refugee Jews to stay in his land. Um, he taxed them heavily, and they went. Many of them went poor, so he threatened to take their kids. Right. So here we go. According to Garcia de Resende, the official chronicler of King John II in 1493, those who refused to convert and could not pay the stipulated fee had their children taken away from them, baptized by force, and deported to Sodome. They were forcefully baptized so they could be raised as Christians and help populate the island that the king had just leased to Avril. Avril Samina. Okay. Avril Samina. Camina. At an annual rent of 100 reis. The island of Sodome was uninhabited at the time of the purchase in 1470 by the Portuguese crown. However, it was fertile land. It was a fertile land which needed cultivation. The expulsion and subsequent enslavement of these children were likely orchestrated to meet what appeared to be an opportunity for the crown to populate and exploit the fertile land to benefit Portugal. So he sent the some odd children to Sodome to populate, to be the workers of the land. It says before the expulsion, the Sephardic children, Kamania, before the expulsion of the Sephardic children, Kamania had an had been empowered to populate the land by other means. He had sent condemned criminals who were called degradados, prostitutes, and other laborers to help populate, cultivated the land. However, he needed more hands. According to Garfield, this was not the real reason the king ordered the abduction of the Sephardic children. The supposed enforcement of the religious purity was what drove his hand to make such a decision. Well, now, hold on. I'm kind of confused because it was not populated before they got there. And here you're telling me that before the expulsion of the Sephardic children, this dude had the power to populate the land by other means. He sent condemned criminals and so-called degradados and prostitutes and other laborers to help populate and cultivate the land. Okay. Whatever, writer. Resende posited that the fate of these children and how they fared in Sodome is unknown. However, he alluded that the success of the island as a thriving sugar base has been traced to the talents of the descendants of these children. Okay. Because the other book says that the Jews started the sugar cane plantations. And we got some kids that are Jews that's in Sodome working on a plantation. All right, some white kids in Africa working on a plantation as slaves. We got to think about some things, folks. Are these white Jews that's been taken out of Portugal and put in West Africa to work on a plantation? No, it's not, because we've already come to the conclusion that these are Moranos. These are Moors. These are Jews that were black. That's right. See if I can find this clip. Is it this one? This one? No. No. Gotta find it. So, the King of Portugal kicked the kids out into the west coast of Africa. Okay. He alluded that the success of the island was a thriving sugar base, as a thriving sugar base. Come on. He alluded that the success of the island as a thriving sugar base has been traced to the talents of the descendants of these children. Mm. That's what the other books say, right? Other sources narrate the story a bit differently. However, the innuendos and apparently exaggerations. However, with innuendos and apparent exaggerations. According to Samuel Usk, the Portuguese Jewish chronicler, the island of Salome had recently been discovered. It was inhabited by lizards, snakes, and other venomous reptiles and was devoid of rational beings. Here the king exiled condemned criminals. He decided to include among them the innocent children of these Jews. Their parents had seemingly been condemned by God's sentence. When the luckiest hour arrived for the barbarity to be inflicted, mothers scratched their faces in grief as their babes, less than 3 years old, were taken from their arms. Honored elders, honored elders tore their beards when their fruit of their bodies was snatched before their eyes. Their fated children raised their piercing cries to the heavens as they were mercilessly torn from their beloved parents. Several women threw themselves at the king's feet, begging for permission to accompany their children, but not even this moved the king's pity. One mother, distraught by this horror, unexplained cruelty, lifted her baby in her arms and, paying no heed to his cries, threw herself from the ship into the haven sea and drowned, embracing her only child. Finally, when those innocent children arrived in the wilderness of Salome, which was to be their grave, they were thrown ashore and were mercilessly left there. Almost all were swallowed up by the enormous lizards on the island, and the remainder who escaped these reptiles wasted away from hunger and abandonment. Similar to Garcia de Rezende narration of the deportation of the Jewish orphans, Malin Nuit posits that subsequently, after the death of King John II of Portugal, his successor and cousin King Manuel deported more Jewish refugees to the island of Salome. Hull adds that the Jews and Christians were exiled to Africa for committing minor offenses like petty theft, and that they were mainly sent to the island of Salome. The island had gradually become a hub and key base for the exportation of slaves to Europe. So we have Jews, which were probably also, the criminals were probably also Jews, being put in the west coast of Africa. Then later on, exported to Europe as slaves. Y'all ain't getting this picture? This from a whole nother article. Listen to this. The story of the Jews of Sodome is one that is remembered for the heart-wrenching narrative of children being torn away from their parents. However, this is not mostly the case as has been discussed. The inhabitants of Sodome, though discovered by the Portuguese in 1470, has served as an escape route for Jews whom willingly immigrated to the island before the Sephardic orphans debacle in 1492, according to Hall. The Portuguese crown sponsored the settlement of the island of Salome and opened it up for trade purposes between the Niger Delta, Okay, purpose between the Niger Delta and southwards. Uh-oh. The island soon served as a base for slave trade, which the Portuguese had already dabbled into in the 1480s, capturing slaves from the area known today as Nigeria, tracing the lineage of Sephardic children to of Sodome. Okay, so here is an interesting situation. Here and other sources which I presented show that the Portuguese uh, put Jews in the west coast of Africa. However, they got there, we heard three different narratives. However, they got there, they were there, and they were traded as so-called slaves or servants. Let's get back to the book. I just needed us to look at that for a minute because we got to remember that this is called a thesis. A dissertation, making history, the Sephardi Jewish orphans of Sao Tome, and the African American appropriation of their story. All right. All right. So King Manuel of Portugal commissioned Vasco da Gama to seek the eastern route around Africa. In the event the two explorers should meet, King Ferdinand gave Columbus a letter of greeting for his arrival. For his rival. Okay, let's see. Let me get back. So basically, everybody was using the Jews to navigate. They had to have a Jew to navigate. All right. How long have I been going? Let me see. Hour and 52 minutes. All right. The story begins in 1494 when the Pope, believing, as all did, that Columbus had found the western sea route to Asia, divided the world between the two contending Iberian nations by drawing a line through the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. His ruling agreed to in the Treaty of Tordesillas, assigned all lands 370 leagues, about 1,170 miles west of Cape Verde Island, to Spain, and all the land east of Portugal. 3 years later, and all the lands east of Portugal. 3 years later, when Columbus was preparing his third voyage across the Western Sea, King Manuel of Portugal commissioned Vasco da Gama to seek the eastern route around Africa In an event the two explorers should meet, King Ferdinand gave Columbus a letter of greeting for his arrival. Da Gama, a learned noble who credited his Hebrew tutor for teaching him navigation, mathematics, and astronomy, left Lisbon in July 1497. Let me make this bigger. In command of 4 ships and 170 men. 2 years later, in September 1499, he returned with 2 ships, 50 men, and a few spices to show for his efforts. If not for his fortuitous encounter with the Jewish pilot, he might not have returned at all. But thanks to him, Portugal beat Spain in a race for Indies riches and monopolized the lucrative spice trade. Approaching the subcontinent, Da Gama had stopped at a small island off the coast of Calicut to careen and clean his ships when a small boat approached. In its bow stood a tall, bearded white man, richly dressed in Eastern attire, calling to them in Spanish. The stranger asked to speak to the captain. Welcome aboard the flagship, he introduced himself as Mankadi, the harbor master of Calicut, and explained that his lord, where is that? Where the hell is it at? Explained that his lord, Raja Samorin, these must be Indian. Okay. Oh, yeah. Calicut. Having heard of the military valor and nautical knowledge of the Portuguese, had sent him to welcome the foreigners. Da Gama, whose voyage thus far had been marred by the attacks along the eastern African coast, suspected a trap and ordered his men to seize Moncade, whoever this guy is, attendants, who immediately confessed their leader's duplicity. Far from being the harbor master, they said, Moncade commanded the ruler's navy, and if he perceived the visitors as a threat, was to signal 4 warships laying in wait to attack. Da Gama held Moncade and ordered him to confess, be boiled in fat and whipped until he died. Admitting his deceit, he agreed to pilot Da Gama's ship to port and present him to Samorin. Although Moncade now claimed to be a new Christian, forced to become a Moor, Da Gama, writing in his journal, described him as a renegade Jew and noted that though his hair and beard were gray, he looked to be about 40. See that? Gray beard, but still looked to be about 40. Samorin was ready to trade with the strangers, but was put off when Da Gama offered cheap trinkets in exchange for priceless jewels. Insulted, Samorin sent them away. The two would meet again, but the initial impression persisted, and their enmity escalated to hostage-taking on both sides. Eventually, Da Gama was allowed to depart with a small quantity of spices and jewels bartered from the local merchants. Moncade, meanwhile, having aroused his enemies at court by aiding the foreigners, gladly accepted Da Gama's invitation to return with him to Portugal. Back in Lisbon, Moncade dropped all pretense. He now claimed to be Alonso Perez, a Spanish Jew from Castile, and said he wished to be baptized and serve his new host country. With the Gamo acting as his godfather, Monarque took the explorer's name and was christened Gaspar de Gama. Mm. Although he was made a cavalier by King Manuel, who regularly conversed with him about lands he had visited, the king always referred to his new court favorite as Gaspar, or Gaspar, the Jewish pilot. Manuel, not knowing that Columbus was sailing in circles in a far-off sea throughout Portugal, was still in a race with Spain. For the riches of Asia had, let me enlarge this. For the riches of Asia, and asked the worn-out explorer to go again. But da Gama, newly married and not inclined to set off on such an arduous trip, recommended in his steed Pedro Cabriel, a young nobleman and a member of the court. Cabriel had never been to sea, but he had commanding presence and was trusted by the king. Given his inexperience, however, the king ordered Cabriel to make Jewish pilots and follow his counsels in all and every matter. The king also ordered his talented conversos physician, Mistri Joa, expert at collaborating zacutos, improve astroloba. I think that's something probably to navigate with, to go with the fleet and chart the expedition. In March 1500, Gabriel set off with 13 ships, loaded this time with better trade goods than the Gama had tried to palm off. As the fleet sailed past Cape Verde Islands and approached the Gulf of Guinea, where the continent narrows abruptly to the east, Gaspar and Gabriel stayed west of the Gulf to avoid getting stuck in the becalmed waters. But when it was time for the fleet to sail east round the Horn of Africa, the winds and currents in the South Atlantic drove them further to the west until one of them looked out, shouted, "Terra!" Gabriel had reached the eastern shore of South America. So, what? Yes, that's true. The earth is a circle. Where's this page? So I finished this page. And it's only 8. I got to get up early, too. All right. In March of 1500, Gabriel set off with 13 ships loaded, this time with a better trade. Okay. 2 years before, Columbus, sailing south of Trinidad, had sighted the continent's northern coast but did not land. Observing the 4 months of the Orinoco River that emptied into the Gulf of Paria, the admiral, with one foot planted firmly on the Bible and the other in the Renaissance science, declared them the 4 rivers flowing out of the Garden of Eden. Gabriel said north along the coast to a protected harbor he named Porto Seguro, safe port, suppressing his belief that he was trespassing on the land reserved for Spain. He struck a wooden cross in the earth and carved on it the arms of Portugal. As it was Sunday, he celebrated mass and handed out little tin crosses to the natives. The following day, Mestri Joa aligned the sun with his astrolabe to determine their latitude. His measurements of 17 degrees south was off by a half a degree. In his report to the king, unpublished for 5 centuries, the physicians included drawings and southern crosses of the Southern Cross and adjacent constellations. Brazil had been discovered. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up right there for this evening, man. We're gonna chop this book up. It's a lot of stuff connected. It's so much stuff connected, yo. So we got Morano's. Man, I'm not even about to break it down again. This is heavy. This is good stuff right here. All right. I want to thank y'all for coming and kicking with your boy. Stopping by Pseudosciences University where you can think what you want to. But right here, you're going to get that truth. You know what I'm saying? We're going to dig open. We're going to break open some of these books. You know, rock out with some of these PDF files. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to get a better understanding. We're going to get a better understanding about some things out here. You know what I'm saying? I ain't ready to open it up yet. You know what I'm saying? And just say it. You know, but if you rocking with me, you rocking with me. Again, thanks for stopping by Pseudosciences University, Another Land Single Productions. Peace.